Hello and welcome to another standard gameplay video on the official MTG Arena channel. Today we're taking a look at a Jund Arcane Bombardment deck. I can finally play this card now that Invoke Despair is banned in standard, so we don't have to hide our enchantments anymore. This 6-mana enchantment says whenever we cast our first instant or sorcery spell each turn, exile an instant or sorcery card at a random from our graveyard, and then copy each card exiled with Arcane Bombardment. So that also includes any previously exiled cards, and then we may cast any number of the copies without paying their mana costs. So this is an enchantment that becomes more powerful as time goes on, so we ideally want to play it in a more controlling strategy where we can prolong the game to get the most out of it. Also pairs very well with instants, that way we can also enable bombardment during the opponent's turn, so we can essentially enable it twice per turn cycle as opposed to just once. I'm also including one copy of Rebuild the City as another sorcery that plays well with bombardment, both ramping into it so we can set up a turn where we play bombardment and immediately enable it, but it can also be a nice card to exile with bombardment to copy it several times, as we get to choose target land, create 3 tokens that are copies of it, except they're 3/3 creatures in addition to their other types, and they also have Vigilance and Menace, so it turns into a nice win condition. Then our other win conditions include 3 copies of Burn Down the House, which can either be a board wipe dealing 5 to each creature and planeswalker, or we can create 3 Devil tokens that are 1/1s that when they die deal 1 damage to any target. So even if we have to wipe the board with the Devils in play, we can still get some damage out of it. And then we also have 4 copies of Herd Migration. This can be discarded for 1 and a green to find a basic land and gain 3 life, at which point it will end up in our graveyard where we can eventually exile it with our Arcane Bombardment and potentially cast it for free, making a 3/3 beast token for each basic land type among lands we control. Of course, a Jund deck is typically only going to have 3 basic land types, Swamp, Mountain, and Forest, but that's also why we're including some of these off-color trial lands, like Xander's Lounge having the island type, and Jadmir's Garden being a plains, so that way we can potentially make 5 beasts with Herd Migration. And then we've got a lot of cheap interaction, of course, and some ramp to get to the 6 mana for Arcane Bombardment. At 1 mana, 2 copies of Duress shines against some more mid-range and control strategies where we can take away potential answers for Arcane Bombardment, maybe ways to blow up enchantments. And then at 2 mana, we've got the full set of Go for the Throat as our spot removal of choice, and 2 copies of Sheoldred's Edict, which is also quite versatile. We can first maybe make the opponent sacrifice a creature, and then later in the game, if we exile it with bombardment, we also have the flexibility of making the opponent sacrifice a token or even a planeswalker. And then at 3 mana, we've got more sweepers with Brotherhood's End, dealing 3 to each creature and each planeswalker. Can also destroy artifacts with mana value 3 or less. And I'm also playing 2 copies of a Dire Strain a Rampage, which can be used as a ramp card early. If we target our own land, we get to find 2 basics in return, so that can set up a bit more mana on the following turn. Can also use it to blow up opposing artifacts or enchantments, and then in the late game, if we can keep replaying it over and over with our bombardment, we can potentially destroy all the opponent's lands. Once they're out of basics, we can just keep destroying the remaining lands until they're out, so that can also be pretty fun, and can also be flashed back for 5 mana, so in the late game, if we're empty-handed, we can still maybe enable bombardment by just flashing back Rampage. And then Riveteer's Charm is also very flexible, can be used to make the opponent sacrifice their most expensive creature or planeswalker, can also exile the top 3 cards of our library, and until our next end step, we may play those cards. So if we're going to use the second mode, it's typically best to cast Riveteer's Charm during the opponent's turn. That way we get to untap, play a land from exile potentially, and then have more mana at our disposal to cast expensive spells we may have exiled, as opposed to casting it during our own turn, and then not really being able to leverage those extra cards. And then last but not least, we can also exile target player's graveyard. Doesn't come up often, but can be useful against a Reanimator deck. And then at 4 mana, Big Score is another important one. As an additional cost, we have to discard a card, but then we get to draw 2 and create 2 treasure tokens, so that can ramp into an early Arcane Bombardment. And then it's also an instant that we can cast with bombardment in play during the opponent's turn to trigger it once again, and then it can provide a ton of card advantage if we ever get lucky enough to exile it with bombardment. And then we also have 2 copies of Survey, get to look at the top 7 cards of our library and put up to 2 land cards from among them onto the battlefield tapped. So this can potentially help us find those splash colors in Xander's Lounge and Jadmir's Garden to enable our Herd Migration. And then we also have 2 copies of Unleash the Inferno as another instant speed removal spell, dealing 7 damage to a creature or planeswalker, and if it deals excess damage, we can also use it to blow up artifacts or enchantments, so that can also be another instant speed way to answer opposing permanents while triggering bombardment. And then I think we've covered everything. Burn down the house, of course, very important, as well as both a sweeper as well as a win condition with the devils. And then our mana base has plenty of tri-lands. We've got a lounge and garden, as well as 4 copies of proving ground, and then a few more dual lands here to fix our mana. Do need to have quite a few basics to search up with herd migration, as well as with our dire strain rampage, which will get 2 basics at once. So we've got 3 swamp, 3 mountain, 3 forest. Yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump in some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. Our hand seems keepable. We'll need to find another red or green source to cast Rampage, since it doesn't work with double swamp. But let's wait on the rest for another turn, give the opponent a chance to maybe draw more non-creature spells. And then now we can fire it off, play another tap land. Okay, opponent with double breach, double farmhand. So hopefully we can get back the rest with bombardment before opponent can cast a second breach. For now we can rampage. And then next turn big score, ramping into bombardment is perfect. Second farmhand is fine. So our opponent's just hitting their land drops, but not really applying a ton of pressure, which is what we like to see. So could discard a bombardment, could discard Go for the Throat, even though Go for the Throat is an enabler for bombardment. So it's a close call. Our opponent's black-white, so they could certainly have answers to enchantments. So I'm leaning towards discard Go for the Throat and hope we pick up more non-creature spells. And that certainly counts. Perfect would be to draw Duress, so we can go bombardment, Duress, and then trigger it right away. Okay, so let's do some math. Can play bombardment and then have 2 mana left, not enough to enable it. If I flashback rampage, then next turn I could bombardment and then cast a 3-drop or a 4-drop if we draw a land. So we're not guaranteed to necessarily enable it right away, so I think we just go for bombardment, hope it doesn't get removed. And if it does, we have a backup. And then big scorers, especially nice with the bombardment, since we can cast it in the opponent's turn to trigger it once again. Opponent cycles tower. Okay, herd migration, also great. So we have a lot of options. Can't quite go for a rampage, flashback, and big score in the opponent's turn. I think we start with big score, discard burn down the house. Even though I could discard herd migration and then big score to maybe get a free herd migration. But yeah, I think we want to keep mana untapped in case we find more instants to enable bombardment in the opponent's turn. And we got a free Go for the Throat for now. Not the most exciting spell to exile, but I'll take it. And then I could Brotherhood's End, although it's not gonna trigger bombardment anymore, so we'll wait. And then next turn maybe just cast Migration. Opponent's got a Wandering Emperor to apply a bit more pressure. Could also be taken out by the damage from Brotherhood's End. And our opponent's still 1 turn away from casting Breach, which is important here. So we've got another shot at getting that free Duress. Okay, so what we might do now is actually flashback a Rampage for starters. That way we have fewer chances of hitting it with bombardment. And then I can always Brotherhood's End afterwards. So let's make sure to blow up a land that's being tapped. And we got a big score instead. Still pretty good here. Discard, probably don't need Survey anymore. Take out a Samurai. Can always draw Duress. So we don't have a ton of basics left. Now the question is, do we Brotherhood's End? Do we hardcast Herd Migration as an option, but feels like a bit of a waste. Could also Edict in the opponent's turn to maybe still get a duress. So that's probably the play. So yeah, let's put a stop here in upkeep. Edict, make them sacrifice Planeswalker. And see what we hit. No duress, but a survey. And then discard probably Brotherhood's End at this point. So our opponent can cast Breach now, which is a bit of a concern, even though we don't have any creatures ourselves, so it's only gonna get a creature from the opponent's graveyard or a Planeswalker, which of course we now put in the graveyard. And then we'll grab some additional lands here. So we're still missing planes for herd migration purposes. Big score I'll keep until the opponent's next turn to enable bombardment again. Alright, opponent goes for Informant, so maybe they didn't have a 7th land yet. No, they did. So they just didn't want to play Breach at the moment. Not sure what they're waiting for. Maybe they want to answer Bombardment first. Okay, we picked up Garden, so that's planes for migration, which now makes 5 tokens. And then big score in the opponent's turn. Still no duress. Can burn out the house. Probably just making devils. Survey to find more lands. Big score to keep drawing. This is a lot of value, although I'm sure opponent has a sweeper in hand to clean up all these tokens. At least with big score we can potentially make more tokens at instant speed in the opponent's end step. Pass a turn. Could also start investing in a second bombardment, although if our opponent has something like Farewell, they could exile both my enchantments. It's going to be a Sunfall for now, yep. That was to be expected. And a Liliana can force us to discard.
Nobody knows Dominaria's shadows.
Once big score, discard wastes first. And then now we finally hit the duress. Took us long enough. Don't think we need Brotherhood's End anymore. And rebuild the city. Also nice to copy with Bombardment. So Breach is gone. Just need to worry about a 9/9 Incubator. Could have potentially held on to Brotherhood's End to destroy it, but then we also lose our treasures. And now with Unleash we've got another clean answer. Rampage can go. And yeah, we're in pretty good shape, I would say. End of turn could cast a Riveteer's Charm as well. Got 22 cards remaining. Have to make sure we don't end up without any cards left in library to close out the game. But yeah, let's just take our turn. And then let's rebuild the city. Any fun lands the opponent controls? Nope. So we'll just go with a basic. And then Rampage could also destroy the Incubator, I suppose. Okay, we're going off. Opponent does get some basics in return, but if they run out of basics at some point, we can also start destroying their lands over and over. So we'll take out a Liliana just to be safe. And then we'll probably cast a Riveteer's Charm in their turn to once again trigger everything.
Fine, I'll take my zombies and leave.
Did they draw another sweeper? Farewell would be the scariest one. Just storefront. And they may be out of basics already, since they didn't search one up with Rampage. So let's exile top 3. And yeah, this should be pretty good. Rampage their land. Burn down the house, make more devils. I think I'm done casting Survey, but we can big score. And yeah, our opponent has seen enough, understandably. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and our hand's missing black mana. It's a little heavy on the 5 and 6 drops here, so it could use some help. If we do find black mana, at least we've got some interaction early with Riveteer's Charm. And then I really need that 4th land for Survey, but then we're off to the races. So maybe it's not so bad. Okay, Herd Migration helps. Gets our black mana while gaining 3. And then put something nice in the graveyard for Bombardment. Turn to Adversary, so... Opponent is a creature deck. Alright, this Brotherhood's End should be effective. Now I could use Charm to exile top 3, and then try and hit my land drop with it. And then I can still Brotherhood's End the turn after, or maybe Survey if we don't feel the need to. Probably going to be better than making them sack Adversary. And an announcement is next. Okay, exile top 3 cards. And we found land and Go for the Throat, which we can both use. Take out the Adversary, or we can just ramp with Survey, because I don't necessarily want Go for the Throat to end up in my graveyard, since it's better to get back cards like our Burn Down the House or a Brotherhood's End later. So maybe we do just Survey here, take an extra hit, and then next turn try to stabilize with Burn Down the House. Keep those basics in the deck in case we need to search them up. Opponent gets to draw off Wedding Announcements. And yeah, they're not applying a ton of extra pressure, so maybe it's fine to play Bombardment and not go for Burn Down the House just yet. Even though they could have removal for enchantments. We've got a backup now. Take 4. And a Restoration of Igancho to get a Plains. That's fine. So our opponent's definitely playing it cautiously, not overextending into a board wipe. So let us probably go for a Burn Down the House. Could also just make 1/1 Devils, and then if we get Herd Migration exiled with Bombardment, we at least don't blow up our entire board. Might be better. It's gonna be a Riveteer's Charm instead. So I can start by just exiling top 3. Even though I won't be able to cast more expensive spells with it. So maybe just make them sack a creature anyway. Make some devils. And I'll attack with 2 of them. Okay, hang on to Brotherhood's End. So now we know we can count on a Riveteer's Charm to provide more card advantage. They could get the Adversary back. And then sink some mana into it. But that's fine by me. And a Sunset Revelry. That's fine too. So now Brotherhood's End can wipe the opponent's entire board, since we can finish off Adversary with the Devil. That seems okay. Could also attack first. Opponent does block. 1 upstairs, 1 to the Adversary. And then we can Riveteer's Charm. exile top 3. And burn down the house, can make more 1/1s. Which will deal 1 more damage when they die. Okay. Wouldn't be able to cast a Herd Migration, sadly. We'll just pass it back. Did not necessarily want to cast the Edict just to put it in the graveyard, since I prefer getting back Herd Migration. Opponent did hit Italy. That's a good one. And they hit another Herd Migration. And burn down the house. Alright, that's quite a bit of damage here. Now with Unleash we can finish off Italy. So what's the best sequencing? If I cast Unleash, we will first burn down the house. So I can deal 5, and then 3 means 4 goes through, so we can finish off the Wedding Festivity as well. So that seems good. And then we can exile top 3 again. We are potentially dead to another burnout house from the opponents, which is pretty scary. Could play my own devils, but if we trade, of course, our opponent can just deal 3 upstairs. So yeah, let's just survey, keep developing our mana, and keep burn out the house to enable bombardment next turn. Sanctuary Warden is pretty well insulated against our burn out the house, although Riveteer's Charm can make them sacrifice it. And a big score is excellent too. So burn down, make tokens. And then we can big score in the opponent's turn. No real point in casting Brotherhood's End. And our opponent has seen enough, so they're not sticking around to find out if they can find another burnout house. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and our hand is acceptable. Good mix of interaction, and then sequencing. Don't need to play the rest on turn 1, so maybe go for tapped Rockfall Veil, so I can use Herd Migration turn 2 without taking damage. Alright, opponent on a red aggro. So now I have the option of casting Go for the Throat, and now with the Swamp I don't have to take any damage doing it. So we'll wait and see if we want to Go for the Throat or if we prefer just using Migration. Right, Adversary, I guess we want to take out now instead. And then next turn we can hit them with Migration plus Duress. And then Big Score's a nice follow-up. Okay, Lightning Strike double Warcrafting, which we don't really care about since we're not going to present any creatures anytime soon. So we'll take Lightning Strike. Now the creature land is potentially a concern. We have Rampage, which can blow up lands. Otherwise we'll need to catch it at instant speed with maybe Shieldred's Edict or Unleash the Inferno. So already have Swamp, either Mountain or Forest makes sense. And I think the tri-lands are predominantly mountains, so we'll grab a Forest. Brotherhood's End could come in handy. I think we still prefer Big Score, and then hope to find Bombardments. Okay, Invasion. Pump Swift Spear. And I guess now with the Warcrafting they can transform it pretty easily, so we'll need Burn Out the House to deal with the transformed dragon. Swiss Spear goes face. So maybe discard Brotherhood's End at this point. Keep the land. And since we need to wait on Burn Down the House, we can survey. And then there's a good chance I end up cycling one of these lands. I don't think I want to use my treasures for it necessarily. So maybe one of them I want to still play tapped. We'll play the plains for herd migration purposes. And then I'll probably end up cycling this one. Alright, so hoping they transform Invasion of Tarkir, so Burn Down the House lines up a bit better. That happens. Still take at least 4 here. And there's Arcane Bombardment. Don't quite have the mana to cast it and Burn Down the House, so we'll need to do this first. And then we'll cycle Proving Ground to find another instant or sorcery to enable Bombardment. Opponent just beating down with the Mishra's Foundry. Can take a few hits, but not too many. I guess I should cycle, although if I find a Sheoldred's Edict, I doubt I'm casting it right now. Another Bombardment. Not exactly what we were hoping for. I'll play the land out. If we find big score, I'll just discard Bombardment instead. And a Lightning Strike puts us to 5, so now we're within range of another Lightning Strike killing us. Swiss Spear doesn't quite do it. So we're at 2. Alright. One draw step here to potentially stabilize. That cycles. And Rampage blows up Foundry. Alright. That helps. And a Brotherhood's End kills Swiss Spear. Now we're still dead to a Burn Spell or Haste creature off the top, but at least we're still in it. Just a mountain. Okay, so at the very least I can flashback Rampage to enable Bombardment once again. Do we want to do anything else? So this is 5 mana, and then probably end up cycling Proving Ground, so can maybe start there. Okay, Riveteer's Charm gives me instant speed answers to creatures and a way to enable Bombardment at instant speed as well. So that's good. Blow up our Pain Land. And a big score is excellent, so discard Bombardments. And no need to cast Brotherhood's End. Now what we would really like is another Herd Migration to gain 3. But that will have to wait. Don't have any Duresses in the graveyard, do I? And then I might want to do a draw step charm in case we exile Duress to take away a sorcery speed burn spell, I guess, but there's not many of those. So we'll let them draw. I guess the drawback of casting charm in their draw step is if they play haste creature afterwards, that would be awkward. So I don't think there's a point in casting it in draw step. We'll let them go to main phase. And then hopefully they're not holding a burn spell here. Exile top 3. And looks like they were slow rolling a burn spell after all. Lightning Strike, yep. That's unfortunate. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and our hand seems keepable. Got our colors sorted, and then a good mix of interaction, migration to hit our line drops. So just missing our Arcane Bombardment pretty much, and maybe some ramp. Opponent blue-white. Looks like soldiers with a turn 2 Danik. So finding a sweeper is going to be important in this matchup. For now, hang on to Riveteer's Charm. Unleash the Inferno could also potentially blow up Mishra's Foundry if it turns into an artifact. And then Riveteer's Charm could be an answer to the Officer. Could also cycle Garden and then Charm next turn, or maybe go for Unleash. Yeah, we do need to find a sweeper eventually, so we'll see if we can find one early. Another Proving Ground. Could also exile top 3 with Riveteer's Charm, although it's not going to be super effective if we only have 4 or 5 mana to work with. So maybe it is time to unleash the Inferno. And then I'm kind of hoping our opponent activates Mishra's Foundry to play around Sweeper, so we can kill both with Unleash, as opposed to playing more soldiers to draw with Officer, which would also make sense. Valiant Veteran. Yep. And another one, so they're definitely not respecting a sweeper, so now I might want to Riveteer's Charm exile top 3, because if we hit a sweeper we can clean up the board. Even a Brotherhood's End would clean up double Valiant Veteran. And there we go, Burnout House. Opponent does get to draw on the way out. And we don't get to play the tapped lounge, unfortunately, but so it goes. And then Big Score can keep digging. Now they still have a lot of value here. Danik out of the graveyard, and the 2 veterans can also provide value once exiled. So it's not as devastating as it could have been. And we still need to deal with Mishra's Foundry, but that's where Unleash will potentially come in handy. Siege Veteran. And what else? Maybe Reinforcements, end of turn. Alright, opponent just main phases Reinforcements instead. Pick up Go for the Throat, answers Siege Veteran. So this turn maybe Big Score, and then we can still Go for the Throat. I'll discard 1 basic, since we might want to cycle this. There's our Bombardment, excellent. So take out Siege Veteran right now, I think. And then hopefully we can afford to tap out for a Bombardment before starting to stabilize. Alright, opponent gets back Danik. That's fine, not too much pressure. So if we go for Bombardment, play tap lands, and then next turn hopefully we can both Survey and then Inferno in the opponent's turn to trigger it twice. Not quite enough mana to get the +1 counters and activate Foundry, which would otherwise be close to lethal here. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Opponent goes for Veteran. So 8 damage coming in. We fall to 3, and yeah, big turn coming up. Hopefully we get Burn Down the House as our first card of Bombardment, so we can wipe the board and then subsequently make Devil tokens. Alright, Brotherhood's End also works, so we'll start there. Deal 3. And a Burn Down the House. So these can make Devil tokens, which will end up dying here, but that's fine. Still deal 3 damage, and then now we can make Devils at instant speed to block the Mishra's Foundry. And I think I hang on to Proving Ground. Frontliner's fine. Can now kill it and Mishra's Foundry at the same time. And Burn Down the House can make Devils. So now the only concern is a flying creature, and our opponent is probably playing with Harbin, so if we don't have an answer lined up, we could still die to it. Although now we have Go for the Throat in exile, so Survey can cast that for free. So unless we find another instant or sorcery, I'm probably not gonna fire it off here. Brutal Cathar exiles a Devil. And a Riveteer's Charm is perfect. So now we can Survey without being too concerned. Get a free big score. Discard Proving Ground. Answer Brutal Cathar and make more devils. Probably leave one devil back for Unearth shenanigans. I'll play the Lounge so we have blue mana for Herd Migration, so we get 5 beasts. I did mean to leave one devil back to maybe block Frontliner, but can always just take 1 or 2 damage here, that's okay. Just need to make sure we have an answer for Harbin. And then Riveteer's Charm end of turn, exile top 3, likely finds us more spells we can cast. And of course we'll get another big score to keep digging. So there's a Frontliner. Opponent's going to use the Beachhead. That's fine. So now that they're tapped out, I may as well Riveteer's Charm before blockers, so we can block the Frontliner with the Devil. And then no need to cast anything else, even though I could destroy artifacts, but then I lose my treasures. And there's Earth Migration, alright. So now we may be able to beat a Harbin, even if it shows up next turn. Charm exiles top 3. Could also exile the opponent's graveyard actually, which is maybe fine. Don't imagine Duress is gonna have any targets, but it's another way of triggering bombardment. Alright, let's attack all out. And pass it back. Can always kill our own creature just to trigger bombardment. But at 7 life, yeah, we can just cast a sweeper at instant speed, kill all our devils, and that does it. Alright, so we get to see our Arcane Bombardment deck in action, and now with the recent standard bannings getting rid of Invoke Despair, it's time for enchantments to step back into the spotlight, and Bombardment was always one of my favorite cards in Standard, so glad I got to showcase it today. The deck could use more tools to help against the red burn decks, more life gain instants or sorceries would help, but couldn't find any that really fit into the strategy, so we may have to wait for future expansions to help out there, but for now I'm pretty happy beating up on other mid-range and control strategies, especially with Duress as a cheap discard effect that we can keep getting back. Can also be adjusted in best of 3 of course, adding more discard effects for control matchups, and maybe more cheap interaction and life gain against the aggressive decks. So that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.